Welcome back to the Raised Garden Bed series. If you missed video 1, I will link it in the description. We talked about when it's great to have raised beds in permaculture and cottage gardens and when maybe it's not such a good idea. Today we're moving into the design process where you start to see your garden take shape before you ever put a shovel in the ground. So let's start with the most practical question first, and then we'll get into the fun stuff. The single most important sizing principle for raised beds comes down to one word: reach. You need to be able to get to every part of your bed without ever stepping into it. The moment you step into a raised bed, you're compacting the very soil you worked so hard to create, and you lose one of the biggest advantages the whole system gives you. University extension research gives us some really clear guidance here that I think is worth taking seriously. If your bed is accessible from both sides, meaning you can walk all the way around it, the maximum practical width is about 4 to 5 feet. Most people with average arm length can comfortably reach to the center from either side at that width. If your bed is up against a wall, a fence, or a structure so that you can only access it from one side, that maximum drops to about 2 to 2.5 feet. That might sound narrow, but it actually works beautifully for a lot of situations, especially against a sunny wall where you might be growing espalier fruit or climbing beans. Length is much more flexible. You can make a bed as long as your space allows, but I'd encourage you to think about how often you need to walk around the end of it to get to the other side. Really long beds without any cross path breaks can create inconvenient detours in your daily gardening routine, and that friction adds up over a season. Some of my beds are 10 feet long. If I had to do it over again, I'd not make them longer than 6 feet. Height is its own conversation that we'll cover in a dedicated video, but for now, just keep in mind that taller beds, 18 inches and up, are going to cost more to fill and to build, but they pay that back in accessibility and then the deep root zone they provide. Now we get into the really enjoyable part. When most people imagine raised beds, they picture a grid of identical rectangles lined up in rows, which works perfectly well, but doesn't have to be the whole story. The cottage garden and potager tradition give us a much richer vocabulary of shapes and arrangements to play with. Let's walk through a few of the most useful ones. The classic rectangle arranged as a garden room is exactly what it sounds like: a defined space with a clear entrance, perhaps framed by an arch or a simple gate, with beds arranged symmetrically or asymmetrically inside of it, and paths creating a sense of movement through the space. This is the potager in its purest form. Think of the famous garden at Villandry in France, or any of the walled kitchen gardens you see in British country houses. The structure is formal, but the planting inside is lush and mixed and a little wild. That contrast is what makes it so beautiful. The U-shape is one of the most practical layouts for a smaller space or for a gardener who wants maximum accessibility with a minimal footprint. You arrange 3 beds, or 3 sections of one continuous bed, in a U around a central working space. You're never more than an arm's length from any part of your planting, and the enclosed feel of a U-shaped layout creates a real sense of shelter and intimacy that plants and pollinators both love. Keyhole beds are a permaculture classic. The idea is that you build a roughly circular or teardrop-shaped bed with a narrow path cut into the center so you can step in and reach all parts of the planting from the inside without compacting the main growing area. They can feel a little whimsical in a cottage garden setting, especially when you soften the outer edges with cascading herbs or low perennials. And then there's the mandala garden, which is essentially a series of keyhole beds arranged in a circular radial pattern, like a wheel with spokes. These are visually stunning from above, which is worth considering if you have an elevated view from a window or a deck. They also function really well because every section of planting is accessible from multiple angles, and the circular layout naturally creates microclimates as taller plants in one section shelter lower growing plants nearby. Your paths deserve as much thought as your beds because they're doing more work than just giving you somewhere to put your feet. A good path defines the space, manages weeds, creates habitat in the edges, and sets the whole tone of how the garden feels. For a cottage or permaculture style, gravel paths are good, particularly a fine horticultural grit or pea gravel, because they drain beautifully, They warm up in the sun and release that heat slowly. They look just right in a romantic garden setting, and low-growing plants like creeping phlox will gradually colonize the edges in the most visually pleasing way. Lay landscape fabric underneath before you add gravel, and you'll suppress weeds for years without reaching for any chemicals. Bark chip paths are another excellent option, especially in a more naturalistic or woodland edge setting. They break down over time and feed the soil underneath, which aligns really well with permaculture principles. They're also softer underfoot, which matters if you're spending long hours in the garden. Width matters here too. Your main access paths, the ones you'll use every time you come into the garden, should be wide enough to walk comfortably without having plants brush your legs on both sides. Around 18 to 24 inches is a good working minimum. If you want to be able to bring a wheelbarrow through, you need at least 30 inches, and honestly 36 is much more comfortable. Narrower paths within the layout, the ones between individual beds inside a garden room, can be more intimate. 12 to 18 inches works well here and contributes to that sense of lushness and enclosure that makes cottage gardens feel so enveloping. One of the things that separates a cottage garden from just a collection of plants is the presence of vertical structure. And in a raised bed layout, vertical elements do two things simultaneously. They look incredible, and they make you a dramatically more efficient grower because you're adding vertical growing space without using any more ground area. An arch at the entrance to your garden room is one of the highest impact additions you can make, whether it's covered in climbing roses, sweet peas, runner beans, or a combination of ornamentals and edibles. It signals to anyone entering that they're stepping into a special space. It creates that storybook moment, and it's surprisingly affordable if you go with a simple metal arch and let the plants do the work. Obelisks and tutors, those tall pyramid-shaped structures, are a potager staple. Place one toward the back or center of a bed, train climbing beans or sweet peas up it, and suddenly you have a focal point that gives the whole composition a sense of height and drama. These work especially well in rectangular or symmetrical layouts where they anchor the design. Simple trellises along the back of a bed serve a similar purpose and are especially useful against a wall or fence where you want to maximize vertical growing space while keeping the bed itself accessible. Cucumbers, squash, indeterminate tomatoes, climbing nasturtiums, and any number of annual climbers will thrive on a good trellis and make the most productive use of vertical space in your garden. Here's where the permaculture thinking really starts to shine in the layout. A pure vegetable garden, replanted every year from scratch, requires a lot of work and inputs. A cottage-style permaculture raised bed garden layers in perennials, small fruits, herbs, and habitat plantings in a way that reduces that annual workload while building ecological complexity over time. In practical terms, this might mean dedicating one or two of your beds entirely to perennial food plants: asparagus, globe artichokes, rhubarb, raspberries, and perennial herbs like thyme and chives. These beds stay mostly in place from year to year, which means their soil structure and root networks get to mature undisturbed, and they provide an early season abundance that fills the hungry gap before your annual crops hit their stride. Small fruit deserves a place in almost every layout. Currants and gooseberries grow beautifully as low standards at the end of beds, acting as structural punctuation in the layout while producing real harvests. A well-placed blueberry bush contributes stunning autumn color as well as fruit, and strawberries trailing over the edge of a raised bed are one of the most beautiful things in a summer cottage garden. The edges of your layout, the transition zones between beds, paths, and surrounding spaces, are where you have the most opportunity to create wildlife habitat. A strip of native wildflowers along the outer boundary of the garden room, a patch of single-flowered perennials at the corner of beds, a small log pile or stone pile tucked into a quiet corner, these are not afterthoughts. They are the features that make your garden genuinely function as an ecosystem rather than just a food production space. So before you start building anything, I really want to encourage you to spend some time with a piece of paper and a pencil, or your notes app, or a garden planning tool, whatever works for you, and sketch out your layout. Think about the shapes, the paths, the structures, and how people and wildlife will actually move through the space. Think about where the sun comes from, where your access points are, and which parts of the garden you'll visit more often. Design for how you actually live and garden, not for how you think you should. In video 3, I'm going to talk about the building itself, the materials you should use, maybe some you should avoid. Please take a minute to like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it really helps my channel grow. Until next time, start planning those garden beds, decide if you want raised beds, and what kind you actually want, because pretty soon we're going to be building and growing.